Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving right into a developing and, frankly, deeply tragic situation out of southern Japan. We're going to break down the immediate, absolute chaos following a devastating 7.1 magnitude earthquake that just struck Kumamoto Prefecture. We are looking at the critical first 48 hours here, which are quite literally a race against time. So, to really grasp the massive scope of this disaster, we need to look at the timeline, the staggering physical damage, the massive rescue operations underway, and of course, the underlying geology that makes this whole event so terrifying. To really understand the sheer suddenness of this crisis, we have to jump straight into the moment of impact. The date is Tuesday, July 28th, 2026. The time is exactly 4:27 p.m. local time. The epicenter, just south of Kumamoto City, right near the town of Uki. But here is what made this initial strike so incredibly violent. It was the depth. This earthquake was incredibly shallow, striking at a depth of just 10 kilometers. And in seismic terms, a shallow earthquake means that all that massive seismic energy just doesn't have the time or distance to dissipate before it violently hits the surface. It basically turned a totally normal Tuesday afternoon into an absolute nightmare of collapsing buildings in immediate breaking news chaos. Okay, let's dive into this. The ground simply did not stop moving. At 4:27 p.m., that massive 7.1 main shock hits. But then, just 45 minutes later, at 5:12 p.m., a massive 6.1 magnitude aftershock rips through the exact same area. And this wasn't just an isolated 1-2 punch. Over the course of these early hours, the entire region was subjected to a relentless assault of over 170 subsequent tremors. 170! To add to the sheer panic of all that shaking, coastal residents were immediately hit with a warning for a 1-meter tsunami. Now, thankfully, that warning was lifted by 6:30 p.m., but the psychological and physical damage inland, that was already done. To truly wrap our heads around the violence of the shaking, we have to talk about this number, 7. Now, this is not the Richter scale. This is the Japan Meteorological Agency's seismic intensity scale, and it measures how strongly the Earth actually shakes at the surface. A 7 is literally the absolute maximum level on this scale. We're talking about a level of shaking where people are thrown through the air. It's impossible to move on your own, and even highly earthquake-resistant buildings can suffer severe damage. To put that into perspective for you, we haven't seen an earthquake hit this maximum intensity of 7 since the catastrophic Noto Peninsular earthquake back in 2024.
Part 1. The impact, devastation, and loss.
The massive scale of infrastructural collapse across the region is just staggering. We saw at least 12 homes completely collapsed, and 7 widespread fires erupted almost instantly. But what really stands out is this jarring contrast between modern transit and ancient history. On one hand, you have the Kyushu Expressway, where massive bridge sections literally shifted and separated. You've got the total suspension of the Shinkansen bullet train, a runway closed at Aso Kumamoto Airport, and a cargo train derailed over at Yatsushiro. But right alongside all that modern paralysis, you have the heartbreaking damage to the stone walls of Kumamoto Castle. That is a 400-year-old historic landmark now wrapped in dust. It really goes to show you that no structure, old or new, was spared. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that when we compare the two deadliest focal points of this disaster, a really grim pattern emerges. It's the secondary events that amplify the tragedy. Take the Aeon Mall in Kashima Town, for instance. The quake itself wasn't the sole killer there. About 200 people actually managed to evacuate after the initial shaking. But then, a suspected gas leak triggered a massive explosion, which collapsed the entire second floor. Over at the Nippon paper plant in Yatsushiro City, it was the catastrophic collapse of an industrial chimney that trapped 11 people. So in both of these cases, the initial tectonic shift triggered fatal infrastructural failures, leaving dozens either missing or unreachable beneath literal tons of steel and concrete.
Part 2. The human toll.
The most sobering figure to emerge as of Wednesday morning is 13. 13 people are confirmed to have lost their lives. And honestly, it is a number that authorities tragically expect could rise as rescue operations continue. It really marks the severe, irreversible gravity of this disaster. And for the survivors, this crisis is far from over. We're seeing a massive secondary emergency unfolding right now. Around 250 people are currently being treated for severe injuries across just 4 regional hospitals, which is putting immense, immediate strain on medical staff. And beyond the hospitals, the absolute lifelines of the region have been severed. Just imagine trying to navigate this kind of trauma with 36,900 homes entirely without electricity and a staggering 84,000 households cut off from running water. On top of all that, in several areas, communication networks have gone completely dark, leaving families totally unable to reach their loved ones or even call for help. This urgent reality was summarized perfectly by Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. Addressing the nation, she stated, "There are people who are still waiting to be rescued. It's a race against time." And those words aren't just political rhetoric. They are the guiding directive for the massive, massive mobilization of resources currently descending upon Kumamoto. Part 3. Response and Rescue Operations. So we are seeing a truly massive volume of boots on the ground right now. Japan has mobilized 4,600 self-defense force soldiers. We have 480 police officers pulled in from 11 different prefectures just to assist. Helicopters are actively sweeping the skies looking for anyone missing. And an incredible 170 soldiers are dedicated entirely to the Aeon Mall site alone. And their intense, focused efforts, they're paying off. They have already successfully pulled 8 people alive from that specific mountain of rubble, proving that absolutely every single minute and every deployed rescuer counts. But, rescuing those trapped is really only one part of the operation. Right now, more than 9,000 displaced individuals have been packed into over 500 evacuation shelters, and they are facing a brutal compounding threat: the weather. The region is currently baking in a heat wave, with temperatures soaring over 32 degrees Celsius. That's about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. With the power grid completely devastated, officials are scrambling to route emergency power generators straightly to these shelters. Why? Just to run the air conditioning. They are desperately trying to prevent a secondary wave of heat-related casualties among these already incredibly vulnerable evacuees. Now, in the midst of all this really grim news, there is a crucial moment of relief. Japan's Nuclear Regulation Authority has confirmed that there are 0 abnormalities at the Sendai nuclear power plant, and none at 2 other regional nuclear facilities either. Let's be real, a nuclear incident on top of this earthquake would have been downright catastrophic, so this is a massive sigh of relief. On top of that, major tech manufacturing hubs located in the region, including plants operated by Sony and TSMC, have survived completely intact and reported no major structural damage. Part 4. The ongoing threat and historical context. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why the local population is so deeply traumatized. The epicenter of Tuesday's earthquake was located right along the Hanagu fault zone. This is the exact same fault zone that ruptured a decade ago in the infamous 2016 Kumamoto earthquake. That disaster was historic. It claimed 275 lives and injured over 2,700 people. So for the residents who saw their roof tiles crash down yesterday, it was a terrifying, deeply traumatic echo of a nightmare they barely survived just 10 years prior. Following that 2016 quake, scientists actually warned there was a 30-year probability of another major event on this exact fault line. Well, today, that scientific probability has become a terrifying reality. And that brings us to this severe, urgent warning from the Japan Meteorological Agency. They're telling residents point blank, for the next week or so, especially the next 2 to 3 days, we would like people to watch out for potential earthquakes with a maximum seismic intensity of 7. The region is absolutely not in recovery mode yet. They remain on the highest possible alert, bracing for the very real possibility of a second massive blow. Which leaves us with this final pressing thought. As the sun sets on Kumamoto, plunging these damaged streets and search sites into total darkness, the work does not stop. With the threat of powerful aftershocks looming, temperatures soaring, and thousands of people without power or water, what will it take to pull the remaining survivors from the rubble before that critical 72-hour window closes? The next few days are going to severely test the limits of Japan's emergency infrastructure and, frankly, the endurance of the human spirit. Thank you so much for watching this explainer. Keep your eyes on the news, and please keep the people of Kumamoto in your thoughts.